You are about to watch trials 1 through 3 of this teaching session. Please be sure to have your PMT out and practice taking data along with the video. As a reminder, every item will be scored as either a 1, 0, or NA. For the purpose of the teaching video, we can assume that numbers 1 through 4 are already correct. You can move down to during teaching trials and begin at number 5, secured child's attention. It is important to note that the first 3 trials will serve as probes. The RBT will present opportunities for the learner to respond to the instruction independently. If the learner responds incorrectly, the RBT will use prompts to see which is effective in promoting the correct response. Depending on the prompt needed for each target, the RBT will determine how she should reinforce each type of response. You will see examples of this later on. Remember that we are looking for a few things at the same time. We're making sure that she secures the child's attention, presents the correct instruction, and that the instruction meets the key features outlined in Step 7, clear, concise, neutral. Additionally, we need to check for inadvertent cues such as eye gaze and physical movements, and check to see if the stimuli are placed equidistant apart. Okay, here we go.
Touch apple.
Okay, pretty fast, but we can see that she secured the child's attention, presented the correct instruction, the instruction was clear, concise, and neutral, and it looks like she isn't giving any inadvertent cues. She's oriented toward the learner, and she isn't providing any physical movements that would serve as a prompt. The stimuli are also placed equidistant apart. With that said, she would score 1s on numbers 5, 6, 7, 8, and half of 9 so far. Let's keep watching.
Very good. My turn.
Okay, so for trial 1, the learner responded correctly and independently. As a consequence, the RBT delivered the reinforcer, she delivered it immediately within 3 seconds, and it was also an appropriate potency given that it was an independent correct response. You should have also noticed that she rotated the stimuli, took data, and began the next trial within 3 to 5 seconds. This means that for trial 1, the RBT scored 1s on numbers 9 through 13, and of course 14 is skipped since the learner responded correctly. Let's continue on to trial 2.
Touch orange.
Looking at numbers 5 through 9 for trial 2, I would say that she secured the child's attention, presented the correct instruction, and the instruction was clear, concise, and neutral. Her gaze is straight towards the learner, and there's no physical movements that would serve as a prompt. I also see that again the stimuli are placed equidistant apart. Based on what we just saw, she would be scored a 1 on numbers 5, 6, 7, 8, and half of 9. Let's keep watching. Uh-oh, the instruction was touch orange, but the learner touched apple. Let's see how the RBT responds.
Touch orange. Touch orange. Touch orange. There you go. Nice. Your turn. Thank you.
In trial 2, since the learner responded incorrectly, the RBT moved up the prompt hierarchy to see which would promote the correct response. Because the purpose of the probe trial is to see which prompt, if any, is needed, we will count the entire sequence as one trial. In future trials, if more intrusive prompts are needed than what was needed during the probe, we would count that as incorrect and move to the next trial using the next most intrusive prompt. Following the instruction touch orange, the RBT needed to use a full physical prompt to evoke the correct response, so I will mark a 1 on item number 10. Once the RBT established that the full physical prompt was effective, she delivered the reinforcer immediately within 3 seconds, and it was appropriate given that this was the probe trial and we were looking to see which prompt would be most effective. However, because the learner's first attempt was to touch the apple, the RBT should have immediately tried to block that response and move to the next prompt immediately, so she gets a 0 on number 14. Lastly, we can see that she rotated the stimuli and took data, so she gets 1s for the rest of the lower items. Let's move on to our last trial, trial number 3.
Touch pair.
Numbers 5 through 9 look good again. She secured the child's attention, presented the correct instruction, the instruction was clear, concise, and neutral, and I don't see any inadvertent cues. Also, the stimuli are again placed equidistant apart. The RBT will get scores of 1s on the first half of trial 3.
Touch pair.
Again, the RBT needed to provide prompts. It looks like this time a model prompt resulted in the correct response from the learner after she asked her to touch pair.
Yeah, that's it. Perfect.
Wrapping up trial 3, we can see that a model prompt was needed, so she gets a score of 1 on item number 10. The correct prompt was delivered that time as well. A reinforcer was delivered within 3 seconds with appropriate potency given the response at probe level. So items 11 through 13 also get a score of 1. Because the learner's initial response to the instruction touch pair was incorrect, the RBT technically should have blocked that response. Therefore, she gets a 0 on number 14. We did see that she rotated the stimuli at the end of the trial. She also collected data, and it looks like she was ready to begin the next trial within 3 to 5 seconds, so she gets 1s on the rest of those items. Lastly, it is important to note that the RBT has now established the prompt levels required for each of the target responses. For the rest of the trials in this session, the RBT will use these prompt levels as a guide for how and when to reinforce. Each time the learner responds at these prompt levels, she will receive the highest magnitude reinforcer. If she requires more help on subsequent trials, for example, if she needs a partial or full physical prompt for pair, she will receive a lower quality reinforcer, like praise. You may now move on to practice trials 4 through 6.